Welcome back to Muay Ying, the podcast. I am your host, Angela Chang, and I'm here with my guest, David Serate. David and I have been in contact for several years now online, and it's just one of those like really wholesome interactions that you rarely ever see with two people who don't know each other in person. And everything's just been like very supportive, but also like we very randomly have these very deep conversations that last all but like 5 minutes, and then we won't hear from each other for like 6 months, and then one of us will check in again about something else. But I also feel like that's the way that we kind of just live our lives. It's been very interesting to see you in Muay Thai, but also you in bull riding and you in skateboarding. So today's topic is beginner mindset, and I thought that David would be a great guest for this.
That's your way of calling me a slight beginner at a lot of stuff. That is true. One of the biggest things that I really like is that kind of, not necessarily that first day beginner feeling, because that's always awful. No one likes that. But that first week, that second session feeling of starting to put stuff together, I'm a huge fan of that. That's why I do new things, right? With Muay Thai, I've been training a lot harder since 2020. I've been doing martial arts for like a long time, but starting something and really going hard on it for what's been maybe about 5 years now, you kind of get to a point where you don't have these like, your increases are small percentage points, right? But like your first week, you might not know what an elbow is. And then your second week, you learn elbow. So that's a huge percentage jump. And that's kind of why I got into a bunch of the other hobbies that I get into, because sometimes, I don't want to say I get bored of Muay Thai, but like I need to feel that fast improvement. And picking things up kind of opens me up to those new avenues of improvement. Does that kind of make sense there?
Yes, it does. It also touches upon something that I speak about a lot every day with my friends, but also within my content of just having other things that fill your cup or give you that kind of fulfillment that you need in other areas. Because Muay Thai is definitely like a slow burn in a lot of ways. Not to say that other things you do, like bull riding. I literally don't know a single other person that does bull riding. And I have no concept of what even goes into it to even say anything about it. And I'm not saying something like skateboarding is not a slow burn, because a lot of these physical intense activities, especially the dangerous ones, they take time. They take a lot of sucking at it before you start to like piece the things together. But I do think like if like someone's main thing is Muay Thai and you just don't feel like you're moving in the way that you want with it, it's really healthy to have something else that kind of grounds you in a way and gives you that kind of sense of like short-term goals and long-term goals.
Yeah, totally. Beyond that, there's also like, if we discount the whole mental side of being able to decompress and go to somewhere else, like say maybe your goal is to be really, really good at Muay Thai and do it as a career. Maybe you might want something different as a hobby to decompress. But also there's like physical benefits, like skateboarding works on your balance, it works on your ability to fall, it works on attention to detail, like weird stuff on how you move your hips and position your feet. All that stuff you might not pick up in Muay Thai, but you might take that and then bring it back to Muay Thai from your other hobbies. It doesn't really matter what hobby it is. Of course, athletic ones, you will get those athletic benefits and some of those mindset benefits, but there's going to be certain things that you'll pick up from like every single other thing that you do that you will take back to Muay Thai or to anything,
People always talk about like Muay Thai and like how you can apply some of the stuff to life and also vice versa. But with some of my conversations with you, the way that you're piecing together these patterns with these other activities that you do, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to bring that mindset back to Muay Thai, even if it's not the physicality of it. I think that's fascinating. Can you share actually your other hobbies and I guess your experience, how you got into them, and then like some of the lessons that you are actively taking back into combat sports?
Yeah, 100%. So let's see, my other hobbies are like the main athletic ones are downhill skateboarding and bull riding. Downhill skateboarding I got into in 2020. I was living with a group of guys and they skated, and basically through osmosis, I kind of ended up getting into it. And then when I moved from college, right, I had my first fight in college. I was still skating. And then I moved to LA and really kind of dialed up both the skating and the fighting. Moving to LA, I ended up at this place called the Gel Lab. It's a group of skaters every Wednesday night. They go to a garage downtown LA at midnight and they skate this garage. It's angled, so it goes down, and they'll skate for like 2-3 hours. And I think finding that community and then kind of really getting plugged in, finding a mentor to teach me how to skate, it really just kind of set me up in a lot of good ways to progress through skating. And then bull riding, this is really recent. I don't know what it was, but I was really bored this winter and I wanted to do something interesting. So I found a coach. So if we compare like combat sports to bull riding, the PBR, professional bull riding, it's like the big promotion that everyone kind of wants to get into. Basically, if we imagine it's the UFC of bull riding. A former PBR rider, he's coaching a group of guys who are all kind of new. So I found like a very introductory place to get into bull riding in Minnesota, and I kind of went from there. A lot of it is, a ridiculous amount is mindset. Some of it is physical, and then there's also like, taking care of your gear, learning some of the culture around it.
When you see someone who like used to dance and then they start something like Muay Thai, you can very easily see the transition with like the body awareness, turning the hips, that stuff. But personally, just seeing something from like bull riding and skateboarding, and it's just like, how are you finding those connections back into combat sports?
First off, all those sports kind of sometimes end up with me getting dumped on my head.
So just casual CTE all around.
Yeah. But I honestly think that the mindset is huge. For me, something that I struggled with a lot when I first started downhill skateboarding was, I don't want to say confidence, because that's kind of the wrong thing. But there's this thing that happened to me when I was starting, when I would be going just in a straight line at about maybe starting to touch maybe 30 miles an hour, where I would have this tendency to get scared, which totally makes sense. And part of the way that we maintain stability with downhill skateboarding is we lean super hard on that lead leg. And that feels wrong, right? Because your body wants to lean backwards because you're scared. And something that I kind of took back into Muay Thai is I don't want to say breath work, but like I started really just focusing on holding the aerodynamic tuck position and just kind of breathing. And usually when I'm skating fast, I'm wearing a full face helmet. So it covers my face and I hear my breath circulating through the helmet. And I was just kind of focusing in on that, focusing in on leaning forward, and like staying very centered and grounded. And I think that taking that calmness back to Muay Thai, that's huge. One of the things when I first got to my current gym that I'm at, I had been out of training for about 6 months because of various like work and life situations, and my timing was off, my range was off. I was just like not sparring as well as I used to. But the one thing they all kind of noticed was like your composure is good. And I think that having that composure that I picked up from skateboarding probably really helps, because if I'm sparring and I'm getting hit, I could either let that shake me, I could, do a lot of the things that I see people do where they eat like light shots in sparring and they'll throw something heavy back. Honestly, probably most of the time it's because they're scared, right? It'll be different if, they're throwing with bad intent because of ego. That's a completely different thing. But like if you're shelling up, eating shots, and then you throw something back hard because you're scared, as the person on the other end, you don't know if it's because of ego or not. So I think that composure is super important, both in training and in fighting, right? Like I'm sure there are moments where you're fighting and you get clipped, you get rocks, you get swept, something like that. And you have to remember that it's just, it's just a single moment. It's not definitive, right? And I guess going back to the other hobby, bull riding, probably one of the biggest things that I learned off that is, I don't want to say aggression because that sounds bad, but basically when you're getting set up to ride a bull, you're sitting inside of basically a little metal box with a door. There's a bull in the box. It's kind of, I don't want to say cramped in there, but it's just enough so that you can slide your legs down and get on the bull. So you climb on and you've got a guy holding your vest in case something goes wrong so he can just lift you back out. So I was in Iowa. This was probably my second time getting on bulls with one of the guys that I was learning with. He was definitely more experienced than me. A lot of our coaches would say, like, be aggressive, like get out there and get after them, because you can't start slow with bull riding, right? There is no like feeling it out in the first round. You've got 8 seconds, hopefully maximum, to stay on that bull. Like, I know personally I'm a pretty slow starter. In a lot of my fights, I would either have a really like a little bit of a slower first round and try to feel them out, and that would result in me like either losing the first round on volume or backing up a lot. For me, at least personally, what I think is I have to get respect fast in the first couple of seconds with Muay Thai, right? And taking that kind of aggressive mindset from bull riding and taking it into Muay Thai helps me like mentally fix on the fact that I'm about to go out there and do something really, really difficult, and I can't start slow. So that's honestly kind of the biggest thing is just the mindset.
Yeah, you mentioned mindset a few times earlier, and I was wondering what you meant by that. But from what you just said, I'm hearing a lot about like leaning into fear and doing things in spite of fear, whether or not it generates fear just from the thought of doing it, or it generates fear because it's a natural response in your body to like fight gravity or like fight a person or like fight a moving aggressive animal.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I do think that feeling that fear is something that is a lot of people don't do. It's important to see where you're at, you know? I mean, I guess people have described me like as an adrenaline junkie. And yeah, that kind of is just feeling that fear and like sitting in it and being uncomfortable. And I assume there's definitely some degree of like catharsis.
Yeah.
Something to do with emotions in there that I don't know about, but it feels good.
Something I noticed when you were talking about being a slow starter in your first rounds, you talked about like getting that respect from that first round. If you're a beginner starting Muay Thai, so I would say the beginner stage is like anything from like day 1 all the way until like, depending on how consistent you're training, maybe year 1 or even year 2 for some people. How do you think that earning respect can look like in a gym? I also am very curious how you have found ways to earn respect doing these other activities too.
Man, that's pretty interesting. A lot of it is respecting the culture of your gym. First off, if you come into my gym and you're like, I don't know, you smell bad, you do. I like that smell bad's the first option, but yeah, basically, if you come into my gym and you smell bad and you're not being a good training partner and you're not listening when the instructor's talking, like that immediately, like you lose a ton of respect. One of the big things, for me at least, I wrote 3 things down: listening, learning, and try. First off, listening, listen to your coaches. Learning, you can kind of tell when someone's kind of like putting the pieces together. You can tell by like how they're looking at stuff. You can tell like if they're incorporating feedback. You can tell like if they're asking the right questions, right? Like a very common question that I hear is like, but what if they did blank, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question. I hear a lot that there are no dumb questions, but I think that asking, but what if blank, like what if they hit me with a switch kick when I'm doing this? Well, a lot of the stuff that we train is highly situational sometimes, right? If they do something different, it's a different situation. But if they ask me, hey, I'm having issues with turning my kick over, something like that. I'm having issues with turning my kick over. What would help me get better? Questions like that, I can kind of tell that they're looking to learn. That's another good way to get respect, is to ask good questions. You know, you're active listening. And then the last item is try. And this one, I specifically put the word try because it came up a lot with the guys that I was bull riding with. Because my coach, he would talk about like how good some riders were, not necessarily because they actually like covered or like stayed on their bull for 8 seconds, but because even when they're starting to tilt off the bull and start to fall, like basically to get off the bull, you have to open your hand and basically unwrap it, right? So you grab the tail of your rope and then you pull it to the other side of your hand and then you fall backwards and you fall on the ground. And my coach had a lot of respect for these guys because they would just stay and try and pull that rope back towards them and get back on the bull, even if they're falling. And he's like, yeah, that's really what we're looking for. We just want to see try. We want to see effort, right?
I guess the equivalent of that would be like not someone who's brand new to sparring, but maybe someone who's still trying to learn how to respond and stuff. And when they're getting cornered, instead of turning around and just being like, I don't know what to do, which is a natural response for some people, is that you can see the gears turning and they actively know that they're like, oh, I'm getting pieced up right now, even if I'm not like getting hurt, but I am getting bombarded with a bunch of stuff that I don't know how to respond with. But you can see the gears turning in that they're trying to figure out what is it that I can do with what I know now to try to figure this out. And when I see people do that in the gym, that same aspect of a person of just like, all right, I'm here, I might as well just try to see what I can do with it. I'm just like, there's something about this person. If they really, really wanted to do this, like for real, that aspect alone is going to take them very far.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. There are some people where I like see that even just like in hitting pads, not that they want to hit the pads hard, not that they want to like be the fastest, but if I see them want to like work on themselves, if I see them like want feedback that's more than just like, how is my form, right? Because that's a super nebulous question, right? It's so non-specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I throw a switch kick and ask, how is my form? You could critique the switch, critique the hand placement. I don't know what they're looking for necessarily. I'll give them something, but it could be a bunch of different things. So I think that, once again, the specificity of the questions that you ask is kind of key. Try and training is one of the bigger things to me.
Yeah.
Like showing up late, I get it, life happens, but if you're consistently late, then you could kind of figure your schedule out and be consistently on time or consistently early. Also, showing up 15 minutes early to wrap your hands and stretch and get your feet and limbs moving is so good. That's my like actual favorite thing in the world. Getting there early, wrapping my hands, putting in earbuds and listening to music while just kind of working on moving, light shadow boxing before class. That's really, really, really just good. Just in general.
I agree. I've been doing Muay Thai for how long now? 13 going on 14 years, right? And to this day, when I'm hitting pads and stuff, in the middle of the round, if I don't understand how something was done, or if I want to do it again, I will actually just like ask the question in the middle of the round. I think this is generally received better actually in the US, because most people in the US, when they start training Muay Thai, they start a little bit later in life compared to Thailand, where everyone starts from when they're a kid. So a lot of the things to them are kind of just like, well, duh, this is just how you do it. Or why are you asking these questions about figuring out this and that? Because I'm the person that's going to figure out like, oh, when my opponent comes in, do I need to step out? Do I need to angle out? Or do I just throw from there? Because to them, it might be like, well, it's obvious. It's like this, and this. But to me, a lot of these things are not obvious, which is why I'm asking. Not all the coaches, but a lot of coaches, I think they're just not negatively reacting, but taken aback by the fact that as someone who's been training for so long, has over 50 fights, is still asking these questions that can be seen as very like beginner day one.
Oh, yeah. Those questions are, in my opinion, kind of the best. It's good for gym culture, right? If, like, say it's a class setting and I don't know the combo. If I don't know the combo, it's probably because I wasn't paying attention, which I should be doing. Let's be honest here. If I want some detail clarified in the combo, I will ask that question. If you're in the position of being like a really way more experienced, having a lot of training time, and you ask that question, right? Someone who's day one, or maybe not day one because they wouldn't know like kind of your experience level. Let's say first 6 months, they'll say, oh, Angela asks questions on really basic stuff. I can ask questions on really basic stuff. Secondly, off that, I think that there's a lot of details that we can miss that our like coach is putting into the drill and maybe assumes that we will implicitly pick up on. I know that we're both different from our coaches. We're both different humans. We could see the same drill and take two different things out of it. But if our coach wants us to specifically pick up on one other thing, then I want to ask the questions to get from my understanding to their understanding. That's absolutely huge for me. And I think personally, this is not really a hot take. This is just actually true. I will stand on this until the day that I die. Basics, simple Muay Thai, stuff that just works, stuff that isn't crazy, flashy. I think that is like the best parts. 100%.
Yes. It really shouldn't be a hot take, because actually, if you look at all the top fighters, what are they really doing? They're doing crosses, they're doing hooks, they're doing middle kicks, they're doing high kicks. There's nothing about what it is that they're doing. Like if you just isolate that in and of itself, that's fancy. The only difference between totally beginner and them is the fact that they have all this fight experience and fight IQ to be able to set those things up, to have the conditioning, the power to be able to knock someone out or hurt someone, or like the eyes to be able to connect. But yeah, I always say, I'm like, if anyone ever moves to Thailand or in their own country decides to just become a full-time fighter and they're training twice a day and doing all this stuff, you're probably going to be spending a lot more time figuring out different ways to apply the same things rather than figuring out brand new striking techniques.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like if I'm thinking about all the stuff that I do, yeah, I look at Instagram reels for like weird new striking stuff, but 90% of the stuff I'll like try once and then never do it ever again.
Yeah.
Honestly, most of the times the interesting stuff that I incorporate is just different uses. Like this past camp, I focused a ton on feinting, right? Which I wouldn't say feinting's a basic, but I'm not throwing like, what is that? The question, I'm not throwing question mark kicks. I'm throwing a switch kick. I'm faking the switch kick, sliding forward and throwing another switch kick, which is all basics. And I don't know, I feel like every single coach has said basics win fights. And then everyone goes into a Muay Thai gym and wants to throw spinning elbows.
Yeah, that's like the common trope that you always see on social media. I mean, it doesn't help that these digital algorithms, they value this like extremeness, right? They value things that are just like super flashy, look really cool and good for likes and shares. But like what really gets someone really far in anything that they do is just the really boring stuff, and going back to that mindset of like day one, week one, month one of like, how do I do this but better? How do I do the same thing but better? The first time I threw a jab, it was probably ugly as hell. I don't remember how it looked like. It was probably ugly as hell. 10 plus years later, I'm still standing in front of the mirror. I'm just like, okay, how do I throw this jab but moving forward? How do I throw this jab but moving backward? How do I throw this jab but moving to the side? How do I throw this jab but fainting, you know? So it's just this boring stuff that, because people logically, we all know that like social media, there's a fakeness to it, right? Just because you don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because you see something doesn't mean it's like 100% of the time true. But what doesn't help is like all this boring stuff that is the bread and butter of dedicated, intentional, consistent people is the stuff that people are not seeing.
Yeah. That's actually kind of become a huge, I don't want to say a huge problem, but it's become like a controversy with the downhill skateboarding because everyone's posting like Warp 9 footage where they use the way the camera lens works to make everything kind of look faster. I think that the common thing is 100 kilometer per hour runs. It's like 60 miles an hour. But a lot of the community really just values like neighborhood stuff, like skating your local neighborhood, skating your local hill, going to small events with your friends. And I think that like taking that back to Muay Thai, we should focus on not necessarily like huge highlight reel fight stuff, or even just like, I don't want to say glorifying fight team training because there is a reason for it, but like we should focus a lot less on those big moments and a lot more on small moments like hanging out at the gym with your friends after training, or like talking to your friends at the gym, training your basics. I think there's a lot of value that people tend to miss when they just want like highlight reel knockouts and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, that's quiet and elegant.
What do you think then about this performative hardness that we see with a lot of beginners?
I think a lot of that performative hardness is kind of, I think that sometimes they may not know kind of the culture and how like martial arts kind of gets the respect. So they try to bring like a different ethos in, right? I mean, there's not an image of what a Muay Thai fighter is in their head, unless they've watched like Kickboxer, or not Kickboxer. What was that Van Damme movie? Is that Bloodsport?
Bloodsport, yeah.
Bloodsport. Unless they watched Bloodsport, they don't know what a Muay Thai
isn't even Muay Thai, by the way.
Yeah, but even if they did watch Bloodsport, they don't. That's not like, it's not the ethos of like what like a lot of people from in the Muay Thai world operate, right? Because if someone operated like that, they wouldn't have any friends and they wouldn't have a gym. So I think that they take in some idea of what Muay Thai people kind of are, what they value. They take that in and they try to, I guess, be that. And they're missing the mark because that's not what it is. I think that over time they will, I don't want to say they will adapt or leave, but they will adapt. I'm sure I was pretty awful day one, like culturally. They will learn from their coach, they'll learn from their teammates, they'll learn from what they see in the gym, and then they'll kind of get closer to the mark. They'll be like, hey, that one fighter that I really look up to on the fight team, he's cool, he's awesome, they're doing good work, but they're also humble. They got all these values there. They got integrity, all this good stuff. And they'll take that and kind of aim for a different target, right? The main thing with that performative hardness is they're taking in the wrong image, right?
Do you think it's just the movies and what they're already exposed to that you think that's just such a universal instinct for a lot of people, like to show up to gyms acting a certain way, expecting a certain thing, or even the first time they spar, they try to like take people's heads off?
Well, I think sparring's a little different because you're getting hit, right? That's very physical. That changes how like the emotions and the mindset goes. I mean, I'm sure people have seen, trash talk from the UFC. I'm sure people have seen all that stuff. And that is not necessarily the best representation of what we're trying to do with martial arts, maybe. Once again, back to that social media thing. A lot of that is curated by social media and isn't what we're actually like looking for. I think that some of those expectations on what you should be are like culturally built in, pushed by social media. When it comes to sparring, you can work people on their first day of sparring with just your jab, right? And just like high volume, light stuff. And that can be absolutely terrifying from the other end, right? Because it's your first day, this guy's hand is in my face the whole time. Even if it's not doing any damage, it's still getting lightly punched in the face. If you've never been punched in the face, is still the hardest you've ever been punched in the face. So like it can be huge for people. There has to be a way to make them feel comfortable in sparring, even if you've like got your game face on and you're doing your Muay Thai correctly, right? I don't know what that would be. Like, are there any things that you do to kind of open this up for people?
So I actually think living and having all this experience training in Thailand has helped me. Like, I don't have a great answer for that either, but I think a piece of what I would love to bring back with me from Thailand is that when I see people spar for the first time ever in their lives, but in Thailand, when they're going against a Thai fighter, right? The Thai fighter is never like bouncing your gloves off and like, all right, let's go. It's your first time. It's okay. We'll go light, whatever. It's still intimidating, right? Even if you trust the person, the person, just like that energy in the room is very intimidating. Now, when you see the Thai fighters spar, the whole time they're giggling. They're having fun, they're touching you, and they'll do like the lightest touch. They land a kick and they'll be like, oh, and they're just like running around the ring. The word for sparring in Thai, the term is len cheng. And len, that first part, it means to play in Thai. So they are literally just playing with the Muay Thai techniques. Of course, you're still going to get some people who are like, I have something to prove. Yeah. But more often than not, the person that is sparring for the first time, their defenses are so down, metaphorically, their defenses are so down that they don't feel this need to like, oh, I have to prove I belong. I need to prove, whatever, because they already are setting their environment for it to be low stakes, silly, having fun, playful. So when I see that and I see a lot of people who spar for the first time, sure, they might have issues controlling their power, but they are fixing it day one. I promise. You can see them trying to work it out day one of like, oh, I need to make sure I am also having fun and I'm not hurting my sparring partner. Whereas I feel like when a lot of people spar for the first time in gyms, wherever they are in the US, even if they are sparring with someone who is very controlled and very light, there's still very much the feeling of like, I'm fighting for my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that produces a very different outcome, a very different mindset, a very different way of how I'm going to adjust. Because from there, it goes from survival and trying to fight your own instincts. Whereas in Thailand, it's not so much about the survival. It's really more focused on like, oh, how can I hit them in a way that we are both learning?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that learning part, it takes a lot of composure, because being in survival mode, like, you don't learn anything. Honestly, I feel like when you're in survival mode, you forget a ton. Like, it sounds bad, but I like have gaps in my memory from like, I don't remember certain parts of doing some adrenaline sports because it was survival mode. I don't know if you've gotten this, but like you get a huge like rush of blood, a huge adrenaline dump, and you just, all the sounds just kind of start to go down and your head gets really, really heavy and you just can't, like, you have to stop doing stuff because your body's like going too hard. I've had that a couple of times, usually off of like really close calls of like almost hitting a car, or I think I had it after my like first or second bull ride. Like, you can't learn anything there. If you're getting that in the gym, I don't know. You shouldn't be getting that in the gym. That like light, playful attitude, 100%, that's the best thing. But I think there is a point at which they will lose their basics. Like, if I see a beginner being very playful, but like with hands down, I don't know. That's, you got to balance it all out, you know?
I think it's useful for beginners to have that playful environment without necessarily being so relaxed and so playful themselves. But let's say that I'm sparring with a complete beginner. I need to make sure that I bring that playful environment in, because it sets up the stage for how they're learning to spar and how they're learning, maybe not Muay Thai culture as a whole, but how Muay Thai culture I want to have going forward in some spaces. Because like, not everyone's going to become a fighter. If people do fight, they usually just take a few casually and then that's it. You know, most people still have their full-time regular office jobs. Like, no one's trying to get super damaged in your head or in their body, right?
Yeah.
It's always on the responsibility of someone who is more experienced to make sure that the person that's newer to the gym is in an environment where learning is facilitated. And that can look different for everyone. We all walk in with our own set of life experiences and preferences and traumas. But I do think that if you're more experienced in the gym and you're sparring someone who's sparring for the first time, or you're clinching with someone who's clinching for the first time, not the first time, but maybe like, you know, the first month or so, it's still on you to make sure that they're learning. And if they're already coming in and their cup is like not willing to be filled for whatever reason, then it's not on you as their sparring partner. And that's something else that they need to address by themselves, or you need to talk to them about it, or you need to talk to the coach about it.
Yeah.
But that being said, most people, I would say, that I meet are there to learn. They're not there because they're like, oh, I'm coming in and I got all this aggression and you guys are all going to feel it. We always have people like that in the gym, but even so, it's still very sparse and few in between. So for anyone listening to this and you feel like your gym is just full of all those people, I think that might be a good sign for you to find a new gym.
Yeah. Another really interesting thing that I really like to do, because I coach the sparring segment of my gym. So we break off, like, last 15-20 minutes, we get some rounds in. And I introduce like maybe one or two techniques with like Dutch drills or whatever. We all get our gear on and then we spar. And then at the end of it, I almost always ask, are there any questions? I'd say probably like 2/3 of the time, no one has any questions. And then I ask, did anyone try today's technique? Say the technique was setting something up and then feint. I'll use it as an opportunity to review the technique, right? So everyone like gets it back into their head. And then if anyone did try it, I'll ask them, hey, did that work for you? And sometimes they're like, hey, it didn't work. And then we can kind of sit down and like workshop that for a bit at the end of sparring. And I feel like I've seen some growth from the people that are sparring when I implement that kind of retrospective, because that's kind of based off of something that I personally do, where I kind of look at on a round by round basis. Say jab was working, leg kick was working. Can I take the jab and the leg kick? Can I put them together into not necessarily a combo, but like, can I use those to feint, to set something up? Can I build a game plan off of what I have? So I think that retrospection after, let's say you had a bad round, you're in survival mode. That's not great. But if you can take what you observed, what little you observed from survival mode, and then end the round, get out of survival mode, or end the day, get out of survival mode, and then review that, I think that that's probably one of the bigger things for learning. Because I've seen a lot of people just after sparring, just gloves in the bag, go home, right? And that, you'll learn something, I think. But having that dedicated time to intentionally put your brain into that learning mode is important.
I like that kind of workshopping, because it really just sets the stage for everyone to just be like, this is what I did well, this is what I couldn't do well. And everyone also observes and learns from that. And gets to kind of see it from like the third person perspective, rather than it just being like, oh, I can only learn when I'm doing it, rather than I can learn after the fact. I can learn by watching. I can learn by a coach guiding me. I think that's a really great way to approach sparring. I haven't seen a lot of places do that yet. I wanted to touch upon a little bit more about like keeping that, I guess I like to call it an empty cup. When you walk into a space with the intention to train, it's like you have to come with an empty cup and just allow the coaches and your more experienced training partners to fill that cup for you. When you are walking to a space and you're like, oh, but I did it this way in my old gym, or but I saw it like this somewhere else, or I saw it like this on Instagram or whatever, then it's really hard to just be able to learn. I think it's fairly easy for a complete beginner to come in with an empty cup because they know where they are. They know that they don't know anything, that they're not great at anything. And every day is an opportunity for them to learn. But what I personally notice is that when people get to a certain point in their experience or their fight careers, they automatically come in with a cup full. That ego has filled that cup to the point where there might be this imaginary status elevation with them. And this is not saying like fighters and their experience and stuff don't matter. That's not what I'm saying, just from a learning perspective.
I've got a slightly different take on this because I know that my path through Muay Thai is very, I guess, influenced by, I guess, my school journey. For me, martial arts has always kind of been like linked with schooling. I started doing Kung Fu as a like in-school curricular activity, which is crazy to think about. And then as I was doing my like college studies, I would do Muay Thai in the summer and I would do college in the school year. Starting in my school years, I brought that like student mindset, and that's been big. You can learn anything from anyone, right? If I go to a gym and if their Muay Thai is not the best, I can learn something because there's new bodies in the space. I can learn something from the coaching style. I can learn something from the coach about life. Hopefully, if they're a decent person, there's always stuff to be learned. There's this one story that I like really heavily identify with from, it's one of the Chinese classics called The Water Margin Bandits. And basically there's this 19-year-old kid in this book, like in the first chapter. And he is a martial artist. He is very skilled with what he does. He's like a really hot-headed kid, and he challenges this instructor. He's like, oh, show me like your skills. I'll beat you, whatever. We all know the story. And of course the instructor, pieces him up. And that story is like a really good reminder to me of how we don't know what someone's walking through the door with. They might not look a certain way. They might not have a certain record, but they probably have some kind of knowledge. And I think that that's something that we all need to remember. Even if you've got a way better record, there can be things, mindset, techniques, strategies, all that stuff that you don't see, right? And that could be what you're learning instead of, you're not learning like from their record or stuff. There is stuff that is still to be learned, and you have to always remember that you don't see like the totality of what the coach has to offer just based on like their experience or record or whatever.
So like hold space for certainty and be humble enough to say, I don't know everything.
Yeah, 100%. I guess that's the beauty of training is you will learn things if you'll learn things if you're listening and open to it.
People should always just try to be curious, no matter where it is that they are. Just come in and be like, oh, what am I going to learn today? What can I take out of this? What is it that I can use to reflect upon myself? And in your case, you're also taking these from one activity to another. And actually, before I forget, you did mention to me one time in a message that you enjoy sparring with older women a lot better.
Yeah. I found that some of them are just like, I'm like in my 20s. I am a adult male in his 20s. I am the archetypal definition of has the athletic performance, right? And if I take that to working with some of the older women around my gym or that I've trained with, I could probably just lean really heavily on that. A lot of what I'm thinking of this is like in jiu-jitsu, a lot of those older women have like attributes, mindset, technique, a lot of stuff that because like they don't have the mentality of an adult male in his 20s, right? They have to develop other things. And if I can steal that from them, that's pretty cool. They're usually really technical. They usually like have just knowledge. Like they've got life experience knowledge, and they're taking that and bringing it back into the sport that we're doing. And I think that's huge, that different mindset. Because a lot of, even like older guys, when they're new to the gym, a lot of older guys try to be athletic 20-year-old males. And some of the younger women in the gym, as much as I hate to say it, they're like a little bit scared because the gym environment can be intimidating. And I think what a lot of like older women, even if they haven't been training, they kind of, I don't know how to say this. They're a little more used to kind of operating in that space. So they've got like a lot of confidence. There's just a lot of attributes that people with a lot of life experience have, right? So I think, wow, huge hot take. Training with people with different life experience is really good for you. That's my thought.
Also a hot take that shouldn't really be a hot take. What do you think is important for people, students, teammates, and coaches to foster this environment of what you can take the most away from that beginner mindset?
Fostering an environment where you can ask questions, I think that's important. Fostering like the right attitudes in your athletes or students is important. Like if every single day cueing everyone to do hard sparring or like giving them mental cues about hard sparring, I think that is like not productive. So I want to build a constructive learning environment. A lot of the stuff that I guess I would do to prep for a fight, a lot of that stuff isn't necessarily the best for learning, right? Because I don't know. I feel like when I was training for a fight, it wasn't so much about learning as identifying what 3 things I'd be using in my fight.
Just application, just like A to B application. Yeah.
To build something good for beginners, that's like a cultural thing. Building an environment where people are like, feel safe, that's big. Having that ability to ask questions is big. And like having a fun environment that people want to come back to is good as well. Like I know there's some people that are a little bit crazy like me, where it's like, do I have fun stories that I think back about my wrestling coach throwing a shoe at me? Of course I do.
Wait.
Yeah.
I want to know more crazy stories. Maybe another time.
But not everyone wants to have that experience, right? Especially if they're casually training, if they don't know that they love the art yet. Huge statement, massively cocky statement. I know everyone loves Muay Thai, they just don't know it yet. But I think that if the training that we do kind of scares off beginners and like doesn't provide that conducive learning environment, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be a great time for a lot of beginners. So that's on like culture, that's on coaches and on teammates to kind of foster that welcoming environment. And thankfully I've been through a lot of different gyms that I feel like got that environment right. Whether it's like, I know the topic of women's only open mats is like, I don't know why it's controversial. The gym is just open. It's not like we took another class out. Usually they just put it in a slot where no one's at the gym, so it's not detracting from my life. Providing a lot of those spaces, like getting a meal after training, just to build a welcoming environment for beginners.
Some of the best gyms that I've walked into have definitely been gyms where everyone, there's no like splitting off or like all this click making because they're fighters, they're hobbyists, they're only here for weight loss. There's none of that happening. Everyone is just all in it together, no matter what it is that their goals are. They can all hang out at the gym. They could all be training partners. Obviously, if someone has a fight, then they need to be paired up a little bit more appropriately. But just as a whole, like there is no segmentation of like, we're better than you because we fight. And I feel like that is this very invisible, unspoken kind of high school-ish environment that I see at a lot of gyms with how their fight team talks about beginners or talks about people who are a little bit more casual in their practice. And I'm not saying like, hey, you need to change your things. Some gyms are the way they are. And if everyone going there is happy with the way it is, I have nothing to say about that. This is just an observation. But just personally, the gyms that I enjoy being at the most in terms of the culture and the priority with learning rather than like, you must listen to me because I am here compared to you. It's just been so much more enjoyable to be in, to take the classes and to teach it.
I don't know what your thoughts are on big gym versus small gym. I think I've been pretty much exclusively in relatively small gyms. And I think that that's shown me a different level of like culture. A lot of the times people can kind of feel like lost in really big gyms because they're not getting attention from the coach. They don't know their teammates. I guess a small gym could be really good to start out in, honestly. That's my thought.
I agree. I think if people tend to veer a little bit more shy or difficult to connect in an environment that a lot of people find intimidating in, starting off at a small gym is probably a better call compared to a huge gym where at any given time there's like 60, 70 people and you're like, I don't know who to look at first. I don't know who anyone is. But in just terms of the gym culture, it really just boils down to where that gym is, because geographically they are going to have their own culture, but also the culture within the gym of like how the coaches and the owners are running the gym. One of the biggest gyms that I went to teach seminars was actually in Barcelona, and everyone there knows each other. But it's also because like one of the head coaches, he is extremely chatty and he just goes up to people like, hey, whatever. Hey, David, have you met this person? He also does downhill skateboarding. And he actively helps to connect people together that might not know each other. And seeing them interact was really eye-opening for me, because I saw that is something that maybe more coaches have to do that are teaching in really big gyms, to be able to get these different members taking this same class to come together and find common middle ground and make it an environment that everyone's looking forward to. At the same time, Barcelona has a lot of tourists and a lot of like international students and digital nomads. So there are also a lot of people that just casually drop in for a week and then they disappear. But even with that, they come in and they see it like, oh, wow, you know, everyone here is really friendly. Everyone here is like, you know, getting along well. The coaches call people out on their bullshit if they're sparring a little bit too hard, or if they come in and they're just like, oh, I just want to take a fighter's class, even though it's my first day training. You know, like there are factors in it where you can make a big gym environment work, but not everyone has those skills to make it work. And unfortunately, what ends up happening most of the time is that these big gym environments end up feeling very commercial.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. I don't want to say it's on the students, but I feel like there is sometimes a fear factor of like holding back the students that are way better than me by training with them. That's not what happens usually. If I'm paired with like a beginner or someone who's really new and they're being like a good training partner, they're doing stuff right. It doesn't matter if they're doing the technique right. If they're learning and making corrections quickly, then I can have a good training session, right? Like I've had people be like, oh, I don't really want to work with you because I know you've got a fight coming up and I don't want to hold you back. And I'm like, but that's not how that works, right? I can learn things like from different body types too. Like taller, shorter, big on punching, big on certain techniques. You learn things. And I think more people need to recognize that and then take it on themselves to be less scared. As a beginner, having the courage to like interact with these people and learn from them is like with downhill skateboarding. I was learning from people that were learning from some of the very best in the world. There's this one time I was just hanging out with my mentor and we have this other guy come in from out of town. I was sitting on a hill with my skateboard with actual world-class talent. This guy was like racing on the world stage, racing internationally, like 10 plus years skating. They're sponsored, and having the courage to ask them for help and having the courage to reach out and interact, that has paid dividends, right? Because you're not going to learn anything sitting in the corner staring at them. So you might as well go up, ask questions, introduce yourself.
I feel like you have this certain kind of empathy that not a lot of people have, where it's you're seeing the situation, but you also fully remember what it was like for you when you were just starting out and how much you appreciated it when someone more experienced were like, hey, let's work together. And you probably remember yourself also thinking like, oh, but who am I?
As like a more experienced person in the space, if you give someone a compliment, they remember that. So if you give them a compliment on something they're doing well, and then you add technical feedback to the compliment, it sticks really well.
Priceless. It's priceless.
Yeah. It's a little sneaky trick to exploit basic human emotions to make people get better at Muay Thai. Now as a coach, I've had a lot of people assume that I have always been able to head kick. And I said, that's not right. Like I've had to stretch, improve technique. No one really has that innate ability to head kick, right? And I'll always say, this was never natural. It was all just training, just a ton, right?
Yeah,
so
I think a lot of people see what it is that they see. And they, again, it's back to that analogy of the social media thing. It's like, this is it and this is all it ever has been. But like to your point about the head kicks, it's like you don't ever want to make someone feel bad. You want to explain like, no, this is what they work towards. But at the same time, I bet also to yourself, you're like, but I put a lot of hard work into getting this head kick.
Yeah. I think that if people start framing like stuff as things you're naturally gifted at, it's super easy to go from, oh, Angela's naturally gifted at the clinch. The only way for me to be good at the clinch is to be naturally gifted at it, and I'm not. I think that's a very, very dangerous path. I don't want to say the power of self-belief. I don't really believe in myself a lot of the time, but it's believing in the power of like learning stuff. Like you can learn stuff really, really well. Like learning and listening to your coach. That's like a secret superpower that just kind of lets you do a bunch of new stuff.
Yes. As you were thinking of the words, I was thinking that. And immediately after, I was like, actually, I don't believe in myself a lot, but I believe in my intent to show up. And it's because of my intent to show up, I will learn. I will try. I will be gritty. I will do what it takes to kind of get from A to B, even if it means taking a bunch of detours along the way.
That's the biggest thing for me, is just willingness to learn and willingness to be a good sport about not being the best at stuff. I think that mental cueing and setting up your mindset is probably one of the biggest things. I went into my last fight like really messed up. I was not in a good place mentally. Focusing really hard on a couple of like mindset cues like really, really helped, because I was not doing good in the lead up. Like even like grabbing my hands, I'm nervous, getting warmed up, I'm nervous, and placing myself in the right mindset really kind of let me go out there and perform. The guy I was going up against had 11 fights, and that's a lot for me. I think I had 4, this guy had 11. And I was like, ooh, this is gonna be rough. And then remembering I had to get my mindset just absolutely dialed in.
Could you share some specific cues that you told yourself, some affirmations? I think a lot of people would want examples.
Actually, this is my absolute favorite at the moment. So the first time I heard this, I was actually riding bulls down in Iowa. It's my 4th or 5th bull overall. The guy that's holding my vest, like to pull me back out if something like messes up. I'm getting set up basically, like you basically tie a rope around your hand. And in that process, you're talking to the guy who's helping pull the rope. I've got my hand, I'm all the way up on the rope. I'm like this close to, I'm just barely about to ride. With bull riding, there's no opening bell. You're sitting there, you're ready to go, and you nod your head and they pull that gate and you're off, right? So I'm sitting there, and I hear my safety yell, I can and I will. And I don't ride the bull for the full 8 seconds, but that cue of I can and I will, like I've got it written down in one of my journals somewhere. I listened to that audio pre-fight and I'm like, okay. And it got me like in the right headspace. It's not, I'm going to win. It's not, I'm going to do well. I can and I will. It's so simple. And that's the one that I've really been enjoying.
I really like that because it focuses on the process rather than the end result.
Yeah. Like you don't think about your opponent, right? Was I better than my last opponent? No, probably not. He's got way more fights than me. Doesn't matter. I did my work. That just was something that really, really helped me.
I love that. Actually, I'm going to write that down and I'm going to think about it some more. And then I'm sure me and you will have follow-up Instagram conversations about that.
Yeah.
I wish I had that when I was fighting, actually, because when I was fighting to get myself into the mindset, first I would listen to my heavy metal playlist while I'm shadowboxing.
Yeah.
And I would just like channel whatever imaginary bad blood, which was all because I don't have any bad blood like whatsoever. But I would just like, I would draw like this very angry energy inside of me just so like I can go in the tension of like, I'm going to fuck shit up. Even though there could have been better ways to approach it, but I didn't have great examples. Thai coaches are very much like, oh, just shadow box and go do it. They're not really going to center you in like intentions or anything. So that was mostly left up to me. But I remember after the first round of a fight that I had one time against someone with like 200 fights, my coach looked me square in the eye. He told me in Thai, he's like, be confident in yourself. And as someone who has zero confidence in myself, what was funny is that I was like, I can't be confident in myself, but I can be confident in you. And because you believe in me, I'm going to be confident in myself.
100%. Yeah. I see a lot of women in my gym, and I'm not sure if they want to spar, right? I'm not sure, because we have like an introductory to sparring, and I find a lot of the women are in that class. I'm not sure if it's because we just had basically our fight team just doing sparring, and that's intimidating. But is there anything beyond what I'd normally do, like with normal guys to get them into sparring? Do you think there's anything that I could be doing, like as a coach or as a training partner, to make, I guess, women feel more comfortable with sparring?
Taking them into sparring as part of the fight team training, or
anyone can jump into sparring. Well, you have to be cleared by the coaches, but anyone can jump into sparring. But I find like a lot of people don't necessarily want to, or they're intimidated. So I want to take the people that are on the fence about it and then fully like push them over the fence into, yes, I want to spar.
What I found really helpful for people who are on the fence is someone that they trust within the fight team, or even like you as the coach would go up to them and be like, hey, let's work together today. Like they might not know what it is that they're going to do, but they trust you. And you can be that like first good experience that they have. Because I think a big fear, speaking for myself and a lot of my friends, not for everyone, of course, a big fear is that you're just going to be thrown to the deep end. And there's just so many unknown things that you don't know about sparring until you actually do it, right? And then a secondary part to that is getting hurt and the pain that results from the unknown deep end. So I think just having like this imaginary kind of hand holding of, hey, let's do this together for even just like a round or two, and be like, all right, next round, is it okay if you go with this person that I've appropriately matched you up with size? If this is something that you're not already doing, it could be a very good icebreaker and a very low entry way for people to view sparring differently, rather than it just being this like leather flying fist thing.
Yeah, I probably should like grab one or two people and have a couple of light rounds with them.
Another option is you can find someone that you trust from the fight team and be like, hey, is it okay if you work the first 2 rounds with that person? And if they say yes, then you go up to the person on the fence and be like, hey, do you wanna work with whatever? So
yeah,
by that way, you leave the ball totally in their court to say yes or no and to opt in and out of it as they please. Because with something like sparring, where someone feels like they're not in control at all, having some form of control over their autonomy and participation, and if it's okay to continue, I think it's very underrated in how someone will enter that space.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Like having an out, like
yeah, exactly. Like if they wanted the out, it's open, it's there, it's not a big deal. You're not going to view them a different way. And if they know that, they're going to approach the situation with like, oh, I'll try it. And if I don't like it, or if it's not for me, then I'll just leave, rather than it being this very black and white thing.
Yeah. I know I'm going to get punched in the face, but I kind of forget the, I guess, emotion of being punched in the face. Right. And I think that that's important for me to recognize and remember as a coach. Like if I'm thinking about how much I spar on a weekly basis, the amount that I am getting punched in the face is way higher than the normal average person. Like,
yes, I totally think you're asking the right questions, but it's also like what we were talking about earlier, like you asking the questions from like where you are to what you want to understand. And now you're applying this with your coaching, getting people to spar too. And I think that's beautiful. What I've done too is I've proactively, when people are looking for new partners, I will actually just call out 2 people, hey, A and B, you go together in the front, and then, whatever you guys go together over there, and everyone else can pick. When I'm a participant and I know that I want variety, I'll just tell someone else like, hey, can I get you next?
Yeah, I went to an open sparring event at, I think, another local gym, and that's what I had to do to get like appropriate variety. Because I think this is kind of, I guess, I don't know, a cautionary tale. If you're the last person on the dance floor, you get the person no one wants to dance with. That's kind of rough, but it is good to be proactive in that, especially if you know that where you are in your Muay Thai journey, you need a specific thing. So if you're a beginner, you need a specific type of person. If you need to work with southpaws, you need southpaws, right? So stuff like that. Take ownership of your learning. I guess another question, do you have any like reminders for people before sparring? Like usually it's like, hey, remember, don't go harder than your partner. Like agree with your partner with how hard you want to go. I usually say keep it light, learn something. That's a good prompt. Are there any that you tend to employ for your students?
So when I am coaching classes, when it comes to sparring, I tell everyone to assume that their partner wants to do technical sparring until there is a verbal agreement because some people are okay with hard sparring, but only with each other. And if they feel safe to do that, I'm not going to stop them. That's completely fine.
Yeah.
They agree on it. Have fun, go to town. But I always tell them, like, whatever it is that you think the smaller person's like 20% is, that's the intensity and the power levels that you guys are going at. If someone is going too hard, or if something is bothering you because you have an injury or whatever it is, I want you to stop the sparring session and just tell them, hey, my whatever is bothering me, or hey, is it okay if we go a little lighter? By prefacing this from the very beginning rather than waiting for it to happen. Because I see, especially in Thailand, they'll wait for something to happen. And then by that time, it's already really hard when, you know, the tempers are running really high and hot to try to remedy that. So by setting the stage and just reminding everyone that it's a learning environment, and to control the intensity levels, and to verbally communicate if something is not okay or if it needs adjustment, it sets the ground. Those are just like really simple reminders that more people can use, rather than, okay, let's spar, and then it's like afterwards you have to go tell the coach like, oh, I have a concussion because I got hit too hard, right? That should not happen to anyone. When I am teaching my seminars, I remind them, I'm like, hey guys, we're going to be here for a very long time doing a lot of drills. It's not going to be in your benefit if you go hard. You're going to get tired. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to be able to pick up anything that you paid to be here for the next 2.5 hours. So it's very important that you are pacing yourselves. And just with that cue, people are like, oh, she's right. I'm going to be doing this for a really long time. Let me chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think that idea of giving people, like, first off, setting off ground rules, right? That's key. Because I mean, I don't know, sparring's communication. You're communicating various things. There's intent. You can read intent. You can pick up stuff that people aren't saying, right? And like giving people the ability to like verbalize what they're feeling, because some people might not necessarily be able to read, like, oh, this person's having a rough time mentally. This person's like struggling or is maybe being really critical of themselves, because I can tell what they're doing in sparring. I think that's hard for especially beginners to pick up on it. I think giving them the tools and showing them that it's fine to verbalize that is key.
The best example I've seen of someone else like setting the ground rules was when I went to Chiang Mai. And have you ever heard of Hong Tong?
No.
So Hong Tong is run by Joe. When I dropped in there, before we started the sparring, he took one of his coaches and was like, this is how I want to see you guys spar. And they literally just live demonstrated the intensity that they wanted. And he said, if you want to pick up the speed, this is how it looks like. And keeping that same intensity and same like impact levels, they picked up the speed. He's like, this is what I don't want to see. So he starts doing these crazy things that sometimes we've seen, like when people catch leg and they sweep someone really hard, or when they grab someone in a body lock and just like twist their back and stuff. He said, if you spar like this, tomorrow you're not going to have sparring partners. And just by putting that out loud, it was literally the first time in my life that I've seen anyone do that. I was just like, this is so effective. Like, there is nothing to misunderstand about that. You know, nothing to misunderstand. What you were saying earlier about kind of being the last person to like get a sparring partner, you end up with the person that no one wants to go with, is that usually that person that no one wants to go with doesn't know that they're the person that no one wants to go with.
Yeah.
So I think by saying that, it's just like, if you do this, then you're going to be that person. No one wants to be that person.
Yeah, totally. As a beginner, right, you can't win every round. So you have to focus, you have to shift your goalposts, right? I wrote this down on my notes. Shift your goalposts from I want to win the round in sparring to I want a very specific goal. I think that for me, maybe I have to move my goalposts to work on something very, very specific that allows the other person to work some of their strengths.
It's different when you're fighting and coaching at the same time, because being a fighter requires you to be so incredibly selfish, because you have to be. But being a coach is the complete opposite. You have to put your own needs aside for the good of your students, of whoever is in class. So it is a tough balancing act. The great way about sparring, it's so dynamic. There's so many ways for people to learn, whether it's you easing off and allowing them to work, or you going in with your intensity, but just picking very certain shots that you know that they need to work on blocking, or they need to work on being more aware of, or they need to work on countering that. Sometimes it's even like, hey, I noticed that you do this really often. I think it's really good, but it would be better if you did it like this instead. There are millions of options of how you can approach that as someone who's still active.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking so much of your time. David, if people want to see where you're up to, see all the crazy things that you're doing, follow you, chat with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram at Serate. It's Serate, Serate.actual. If you want to see me in person, I currently coach and train at Minnesota Colleague Group. So MKG, I train at their headquarters location. I also will be hopefully riding at Lone Oak Rodeo on August 7th to 8th in Mayer, Minnesota. So those are all the places you can find me. You can reach out to me at any time. I'm generally pretty open with the Instagram DMs. And thanks so much, Angela, for having me on as part of this podcast. It's great to finally talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. This is such a cool conversation.
Yeah.
I will put your Instagram handle in the show notes for anyone who wants to reach you a little bit easier that way.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome.
David.
Thank you.